This is the September 13th, 2021 meeting of the Yolo County Transportation District Board of Directors. And I'm Don Saylor, Chair for 2021. I'm calling the meeting to order. So we've just determined we have a quorum. Can you please call roll, Kathy?
Kathy, looks like you're on mute. Ah, there you go.
City of Davis.
Here.
City of West Sacramento.
Here.
City of Winters.
Here.
City of Woodland. Not yet in attendance. And County of Yolo.
Here.
We have Caltrans District 3 in attendance. Do we have UC Davis?
Not at this time, and I am promoting, and adding Director Stollard to the panelist now.
Very good, very good. Autumn, you're here with us tonight. Is there anything you'd like to do to modify the agenda, or is it as presented you're proposing this be our agenda? You're on mute this time.
Thank you, Director Saylor. I propose going ahead with the agenda as written.
All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Ledesma moves.
Second by Ferrix.
Okay, so we have a motion by Ledesma, second by Frericks. Let's do that, and then I'll go through the meeting ground rules after we've approved our agenda. So please call roll. Kathy, is this
City
you?
of Davis.
Okay.
Aye.
City of West Sacramento.
Aye.
Winters.
Aye.
Woodland.
Aye.
Yolo County.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. We have an agenda. Tonight's meeting is being conducted pursuant to the executive order by Governor Newsom, Executive Order N-29-20. This is a meeting being conducted via teleconference. That executive order allows bodies like ours to meet in this manner and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. There are instructions for how to participate in the course of this meeting, and we will have public comment live during the meeting. We have also set up a process where individuals can participate and comment by providing us something in writing by 4 o'clock of the day of the meeting. And we do have some comments on individual items that we received in writing, meeting that requirement. And those will be read into the record when we get to those items. There will be opportunity for people to speak on matters that come before us, as well as a public comment on items not on our agenda. And we'll limit those comments to 2 minutes as we get into the course of our meeting. And if you're participating via the Zoom platform, then there's a way for you to raise your hand and be able to speak. If you're participating in this meeting by phone, then you press *9 and proceed that way. And if there's for some reason you have a question about how the meeting is proceeding, Kathy, are you monitoring your email during the course of the meeting?
No, I am not able to from here.
Okay, so Autumn, is someone able to monitor their email so that somebody with a concern can bring it forward? And what would that email address be?
I can monitor my email, and I would ask that the public who wish to make a comment at this time via email, send those to J Perez, and that's JPEREZ at YCTD.org. And I'll be monitoring my email.
Excellent. Thank you, Jose. So with that, I think we've set the guidelines, and we'll proceed. And one last thing, colleagues, as when you do speak, please ask to be recognized. I'll recognize you, and then as you speak, please announce your name. And then as we go into motions, all our motions will be roll call, and you identify yourself so that when you speak, so that everyone who is listening in can understand who's speaking. And with all of that, this brings us to item 3, which is comments from public regarding matters not on the agenda, but within purview of this agency. And note that since an item is not scheduled for discussion, we're legally not allowed to participate. Of course, it's also in fairness to other parties who might have an interest in that topic as well. So with that, are there any persons who would like to address us in public comment on matters not on our agenda, but within our purview, who are present on the Zoom call?
We do have a request, Director Saylor, from Mr. Alan Hirsch.
Very good. And Alan, you have 2 minutes in the general public comment. And as we said, there'll be items later where you have a chance to speak. Mr. Hirsch, are you with us?
Thank you very much. I appreciate, Don, I want to appreciate your basically setting up an email where it's monitored for people who can't call in. That's very, very gracious. I've never seen a meeting done like that. That's really important. So to begin my comment, I sent you a letter, the Caltrans a letter, and we also CC'd you about the scope of the study project for the I-80 widening, which might be these multi-purpose lanes or might not be. I want to point this really important that this be a multimodal project and that it basically focused on getting people on transit and not increasing driving. The state plan for addressing carbon footprint means reducing vehicle miles traveled by 19%. And when you basically can combine that with the population increase by 2050, that means we're going to have 1/3 less driving. If you're driving Sacramento three times a week, you're driving 2 times a week, and the other time is you're going to take a bus. We need to put those buses on plan for those buses. They should be part of the short range transit plan. That's critical. And I'm wondering whether you have planned and made comments to Caltrans to basically put the capacity needed in for those additional buses. The second is, has RT and Solana Transit been contacted to make comments on the scope of this project? Because this has to be a transit project, not a highway project. The next is why isn't there a report this evening on the agenda about I-80? This is the biggest project going in your entire agency. It's a massive project. Every meeting should be reports on the status and the updates of it. It's very important. And fourth, to change subject, the DISC project that's happening in Davis. That's a potential to put a major bus terminal and bus rapid transit features on Mace Boulevard. You should be commenting on that now. There'll be a short window. This is the time to basically make sure that's a transit-oriented development. Thank you very much. Your agency is so important for dealing with climate change in our region. Please be active.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate those comments, and they're well taken. Are there any other public comments on the Zoom at this point?
I do not see any others at this time.
Okay, Jose and Kathy and Autumn, we had a number of public comments submitted in writing. They all seem, in my recollection, they all were addressing specific items on our agenda. Is that true, or are there any that should be read now?
Chairman Saylor, I believe that's correct. We did receive a letter from Alan Hirsch, which he's just largely spoken to some of those major points in his comments just now. My recollection is that the remainder of comments we've received are related to the Yologo Phase 2 service changes or the staffing shortages, items 6 and 8.
Okay. When we get to the long-range calendar, perhaps we'll discuss the I-80, maybe an update. We'll do it in the long-range calendar. Next item brings us to item 4, the consent agenda. Autumn, is there anything that you would like to remove from the consent agenda, or does that stand?
No removals from staff.
All right, colleagues, anybody have anything you'd like to bring off consent for discussion? I don't see any.
Move approval of the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
Lauren seconds the motion.
Very good. So a motion by Stallard and a second by Lauren to approve the consent calendar. Clerk, please call the roll.
Davis,
Aye.
West Sacramento,
Aye.
Winters,
Aye.
Woodland,
Aye.
Yolo County.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion is passed.
Okay, very good. Thank you. We're coming to item 5, which is board member reports, announcements, other nominations and presentations. Has Director Dulcich joined us at this point? I believe he's not going to be with us tonight. Is that accurate?
That is correct, Director Saylor, and in his stead, I believe we have Mabel Salon, who I'm attempting to promote to
Okay,
panelist.
excellent.
Together.
Excellent. Okay, is there any report from any member of the board? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll move on to item 6. Would you do me a favor when we're not referring directly to the material on the shared screen? Can we remove that so that we can see the full group? Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. That's a much more interesting picture.
In living color.
You're right. Very good. So we're on item 6 now, which is a public hearing to consider adoption of the Yologo Phase 2 service changes. And that's Autumn, do you want to open that discussion?
Sure, I'll start with just a few comments. Thank you, Chairman Saylor. So in a few minutes, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Christian Mieser, who's going to present staff's recommendation and provide an update on this item. As you know, the Yologo is the plan for expanding and improving transit in the county based on our comprehensive operational analysis that was adopted in April. We had planned to be rolling out phase 1 of the Yologo improvements today, but as we'll be talking about it in the upcoming agenda item, that it has now been postponed. So this item is to look at the second phase of Yologo implementation. Obviously, given some of the challenges we're having right now with implementing phase 1, I would say the timing on when we'll be rolling this out is a question. The staff report that you have in front of you says this would take effect no earlier than October 24th, 2021. I would say at this point, that would be an ambitious timeline, and I'll welcome questions and discussion from the board regarding that after Kristen has given her presentation. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Kristen.
Hi, thank you, Autumn. I am going to really wow you, Don, with screen sharing. Now, if you thought that was an impressive picture, we'll try this one. Are you able to see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Good evening, Chair Saylor and members of the board. Let's see, are you seeing this in full screen? I apologize.
What we're
We're
seeing,
seeing it in the presentation mode, so we can see the slides on the side.
Okay, let me try to get it set up.
there you go. Slide.
Here we go. So with this item, we are asking you to consider the phase 2 service changes for Yologo. Listen to the public testimony and consider adopting the changes after the public hearing. As Autumn just said, these phase 2 changes are consistent with the Yologo study that you reviewed and approved in April 2021. The phase 2 changes focus mainly on West Sacramento and involve only routes that serve West Sacramento. Again, as Autumn said, we have stated that these changes would take place no earlier than Sunday, October 24th, but again, we may need to revisit that timeline given the issues that we're having with rolling out phase 1, which we'll discuss in more detail in item 8. We do want to note, though, that these phase 2 changes in West Sacramento include both service expansions and reductions, so the net impact on the number of drivers is likely going to be negligible. So I'll talk first about the set of changes that are proposed for Southport and the southern part of West Sacramento. The first recommendation is to discontinue a couple of our underutilized routes, 35 and 39. So 35 was a local circulator that connected the Southport community with the West Sacramento Transit Center. Route 39 was more of a commuter route that only operated weekdays during commute times and connected the Southport community with downtown Sacramento. Those two routes would be discontinued under this proposal and replaced with a new Route 37, which is sort of a hybrid of the two routes because it would operate weekdays only, but it would operate not just during the AM and PM commutes. It would also serve limited midday trips, primarily to coordinate with the school bell schedules. As you can see on this map, the routes 35 and 39 were very circuitous, which may have contributed to them being underutilized. The new Route 37 would be a more direct, streamlined route that travels primarily along Jefferson Boulevard. But unlike the Route 35 that stopped at the transit center, this route would go all the way to downtown for all trips. In downtown Sacramento, we're proposing to modify the route path there as well. So previously, Route 35 did not go downtown, but Route 39 did. And again, it was very circuitous. The AM path was different than the PM path. So we're proposing to streamline it and serve the same streets, both in the AM and PM. And then also to get off of Capitol Mall and to move service to L Street to avoid sort of there's a lot of detours on Capitol Mall that impact our service and on-time performance. The next set of recommendations has to do with the Route 241, which connects the industrial area shown in the map with downtown Sacramento. We're proposing to discontinue this Route 241, which is currently underutilized, so that we can use those resources on more frequent services like the increased frequency on Route 42. Like I said, this Route 241 primarily serves an industrial area, which isn't a super transit friendly environment. After this route is discontinued, the primary alternative for people would either be the West Sacramento on-demand rideshare, if they were going to the industrial area south of West Capitol Avenue, or if they were traveling on West Capitol Avenue, they could of course use the Route 42. We are also proposing in phase 2 to make some minor adjustments to local routes 40, 41, and 240. So in general, it would be restoring the earliest and latest trips on those routes, which were discontinued temporarily due to COVID. And then the Route 240, which is the orange route shown on this map, we're proposing to have that route serve the Stillwater Loop, which is shown in the orange dotted line, only 3 times per day, because the bus currently going out to that area gets stuck in a lot of traffic. It negatively impacts on-time performance for the entire day on that route. So we are proposing to just serve it during the AM peak, the PM peak, and 1 midday trip. All of those routes I just discussed, 40, 41, and 240, we're proposing to change the alignment downtown as well. Mainly the purpose of the change is again to get the buses off of Capitol Mall and move all of our routes onto alternative streets downtown to get out of all of the recurring detours that take place on Capitol Mall. So that is a summary of the phase 2 recommended changes. And now we can open it up to the public hearing, and I'll take comments and questions as needed.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Before we open public hearing, we'll go to board members for questions. And I'll just have a brief question. So you refer to it as phase 2 of Yologo. So could you just put that in context just a tad? So yeah. We've been at this a while. So how does this fit in the overall picture?
Sure. Yeah. I'm sorry. I live and breathe it, so I could recap that for sure. So we're proposing to roll out the Yologo recommendations that you adopted in April in a phased manner. Phase 1 is the Route 42, increasing the frequency and permanently discontinuing routes that were not operational anyways. So that phase 1 had no real impact on the street except for the Route 42 increase in frequency, which of course has been delayed. But phase 2 are these West Sacramento changes. Phase 3 would be the changes in Woodland, including replacing some of the fixed routes with microtransit and then restructuring the remaining fixed routes. And then Phase 4 is kind of longer term. There's just little things here and there where we were going to bring back some additional commute and express services. So that would really be Phase 4, and that would be date to be determined based on when we see people returning to jobs in downtown Sacramento.
Okay, well, thank you. So this has been noticed as a public hearing. Before we open the public hearing, I want to turn to colleagues and ask if you have questions that you'd like to raise for clarification for staff and any other questions that you have. And I'd like to start with Director Ledesma, given that this is kind of pertains to jurisdiction he represents on our board.
Thank you, Chair Saylor, and good evening, everyone. No, I think I don't have any real kind of level setting. I think Kristen provided a good overview. This is not anything we haven't heard before through the Yologo process, which was very transparent as much as you could be during the pandemic and trying to get feedback on where we thought the changes might be. This is all familiar territory for us. So I'm not necessarily going to voice a firm opinion, but I am leaning towards supporting these. I think the only issue that I was bringing up tonight was the amount of outreach you're able to have now that it's here to implement. And I think it's an area where actually I know our city staff is on a line tonight, but you know, there is a larger strategy that West Sacramento is working on, and I know they haven't even had a chance to meet with the new executive director at Yologo yet, and to really be able to articulate to the public, both at the local level, at our council, with our council, as well as with our residents, kind of that, yeah, these are necessary streamlining that we think would have been necessary with or without COVID. I think that was one of the things we learned in Yologo. But the other part of it is how we work moving forward together with our VIA service, our plans with our mobility action plan. There's very relevant parts of our mobility strategy that I think the public would deserve maybe a little more time to better understand. I know the comments, first of all, to those residents that are on the phone tonight, but the written comments that came in reflected an awareness that these changes would be coming, and certainly the awareness of the impact of COVID to ridership. And but I think there is an opportunity here for us now that the executive director, Autumn, first of all, formal welcome on your first meeting, but also to really to better work together, the city staff along with our Yologo staff, to really be able to articulate where we might go from here, future plans, like I said, through the mobility action plan or through our VIA service. So, but I welcome hearing from the public directly, and then we can come back for more deliberation about it. So, but thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from any colleagues before we open the public hearing? Okay, I don't see any. So we'll take the step to open the formal public hearing. And this is just a little different than the comment period that we'd normally have, but primarily because it's a formal public hearing. So we'll open, and I ask for folks who would like to speak that you focus for 2 minutes. We do have some written comments that we'll hear after the spoken comments. Is there anyone who'd like to address this? I'll hereby open the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to address us on this topic?
At this time, Chair Saylor, we do not have any requests for public comment on this item or, during this hearing.
Okay, very good. Hope, should we read out loud the written public comments that we've received, or should we summarize them in some manner? I know that's challenging. I've read them all.
I guess that is the question, Chair Saylor, is has the entire board had the opportunity to read and receive those comments? And if so, I would advise that we just make them part of the formal record.
All right. Is there anyone who has not had an opportunity, who would like to have them read? Is there anyone who would like to have them read? Okay, they are a part of the record. I did read them. I found them very, very insightful and responsive to the request for insight and input. So thank you, everyone. I think about a half dozen or so comments from residents of West Sacramento who are currently riders, and really good insights. With that, we'll move on. Is there any, are there any further comments that have been requested? I think the answer is no. So we'll close the public hearing and we'll move to action. We do have a recommendation. Autumn, would you like to summarize your recommendation one last time before we consider it?
Yeah, so our recommendation is to approve the phase 2 service changes, but with knowing that they will not be implemented before the date that's listed, but with the caveat that we are date uncertain as to when those would move forward at this point, given the focus currently on working to increase staffing to implement phase 1.
If the action were not taken tonight, let's say we were to have it come back to us one more time with some additional opportunities for process and conversation with West Sacramento interests, would that be detrimental to its implementation?
At this time, I don't believe that would be a problem. Again, I think we've got our hands full trying to get phase 1 rolled out. So I think if there was an interest and desire on the part of the board to postpone action on this to a subsequent meeting, I think staff would be fine with that.
Chris, are you comfortable moving forward now, or would you like to have more conversation with your city commission and city staff?
I'd like there to be more conversation with the Yologo staff. I think there is a meeting on the books for staff, and as I said, I think we could vote, but I think it's just in the interest of the public. There were some really good suggestions there. I think part of that imperative is frankly on myself and my colleagues at the city level, to city staff levels, make sure they understand, there's an understanding that kind of the goals of the Yologo from the beginning was streamlining. Part of our goals, and this is where I think from our perspective, having a more broader view of kind of what our strategy is here would be beneficial just for the public discourse, Mr. Chair, and that we could. I'm in favor and fully supportive of the Yologo recommendations as they are, but I think for the benefit of not feeling as though maybe a bit rushed, there's no imperative to do it today, is we can have a broader discussion about where this is going, and that gives our city staff some time to take in some of the public comment that came in as well.
Hope, would we need to repost it for an additional public hearing if it was deferred, or could we maybe take an action and then have it come back if necessary on which
There's always the option, Director Saylor, to bring it back, right, for further fine tuning. In terms of the public hearing, I would actually suggest that it get reposted anyway if you were not to act on it tonight, because there may be changes to it, in all honesty, as the district and city staff work together and take into the comments that were received and do that fine tuning. So I think it's really up to the board as to what they're most comfortable with. Certainly providing the public plenty of notice of another hearing makes sense, just to make sure everybody's aware of the potential changes.
Okay, Chris, how do you want to go?
I'll ask that we continue or read this again in October. Yes.
Okay, so we'll bring it and without objection, we'll bring it back. And Autumn, I think the idea is to have some conversation with city staff to be sure everybody understands what's happening, and I think you have support of the board to proceed at this point, and we'll bring it back.
And Hope, for clarification, I believe a while ago we had something where we wanted to keep the public hearing technically open and not close it and leave it open until, okay.
And we'll
just
do
want to
that.
make sure I understood.
I would ask that the chair please do that acknowledgement here as well.
Yeah, so we'll keep this open until our October meeting, which the date of that is October 11. Time certain, date certain, October 11. We'll keep the public hearing open. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, staff, for your work on this.
Very good. So we'll move on to item 7. And this is approve the Microtransit and Mobility as a Service RFI for planning purposes. Let's see. Ms. Bernstein, do you want to have any open comments for this?
We are once again going to be treated to the PowerPoint skills of Kristen, and I'll just say at the outset that this is a RFI that we're proposing to put forward, a request for information, and is the first step in a kind of a multi-step process. We do anticipate going out with an RFP, but we are not there yet, and this is really around looking at the next iteration of microtransit with a particular focus on the city of Woodland, but then also thinking more broadly about as microtransit becomes a fixture in more Yolo County communities, how do we make sure that we have interoperability and information for users across all of the systems. So with that, I'll turn it over to Krista.
Okay, thanks, Autumn. And good evening again, everyone. So I'm just going to check again. Can everyone see the PowerPoint full screen mode here? Okay, thank you. Oops, we may have some animations happening that I wasn't familiar with. Today I'm presenting for your consideration and potential adoption a draft Microtransit and Mobility as a Service, or as some people call it, MAS, Request for Information, or RFI for planning purposes. So I'll start with a little bit of background. As you know, we currently operate Microtransit, branded as Your Ride, in Knights Landing community, which connects that rural community to the city of Woodland if residents want to travel that far, or they can travel within the city of, or the area of Knights Landing. We also operate in Winters and with connections to the city of Davis and Vacaville. In 2022, consistent with the Yologo plan, we are planning to expand our microtransit offerings into the city of Woodland with an intra-city microtransit project there. Before we do that expansion, we want to conduct a competitive solicitation to bring on board a vendor or offer in a couple different areas. So what we know so far is that the solicitation will definitely include some technical assistance to help us plan the microtransit service for Woodland. So that would help us decide how many vehicles to get, what the service area should be, those sorts of parameters. We will also want to get a microtransit technology platform. So basically a software or an app that would allow us to do reservations, dispatch, and payment for the microtransit service itself. We're also considering potentially having some options in the solicitation, including potentially something called Mobility as a Service, which I'll describe in more detail later. We are also open to the possibility of the solicitation including microtransit drivers, microtransit vehicles, and microtransit customer service. So essentially, what we've learned through this exercise, we've been talking with a lot of people who have implemented microtransit, and what we've learned is that if you've seen one microtransit system, you've seen one microtransit system, because everybody's doing something slightly different and unique, and we don't want to narrow ourselves down in any way at this point. What we want to do is go out for a solicitation and find out everything there is to know about this and what technology could help us here. At this point, I'm just going to interrupt the presentation a bit with this definition of what mobility as a service is, because it's a wonky concept that you may or may not have heard before. So mobility as a service is an app or a digital platform that allows the customer to plan, do some trip planning, and not just look at one mode of transportation in their trip planning, but see all the different modes of transportation that are available to them. So in an app, they would enter their starting point and their ending point. And what would be brought up with this software tool is both potentially the microtransit options they have available to them, the fixed route transportation options they have available to them. Maybe there's bike share or scooter share in the tool that comes up, TNC services like Uber or Lyft. Basically, it allows people a one-stop shop for your trip planning and allows you to see all different sorts of modes. So as we've started to think about rolling out microtransit in Woodland, we've been thinking about it a lot, and what we've heard from many people who have implemented microtransit is that a best practice is to clearly define your goals from the start. So what are you hoping to achieve with microtransit? Otherwise, you can kind of end up trying to do all things for all people and not succeeding at any of them. As you may recall, we did bring some draft microtransit goals to you previously. We first presented draft microtransit goals to the Citizens Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee in March. And then we refined those goals based on their input and brought you a draft in April. After we brought those goals to you for feedback, we spent the summer sort of doing additional research in coordination with the City of Woodland related to microtransit. So we met regularly with them to try to discern what the city's goals are for their particular service area. So in addition to having overall arching microtransit goals for YCTD, each service area may have a specific need or goal that they want to meet. In Knights Landing and Winters, that was really connecting those rural communities to opportunities and things that were needed in nearby adjacent bigger cities. And we wanted to find out what Woodland wants to achieve. We also worked with City of Woodland staff to conduct several meetings with peer agencies in California and really across the US who've implemented microtransit to get some lessons learned and best practices. After doing all of that research with City of Woodland, I think we decided jointly with Woodland that a logical next step would be to release a request for information or an RFI. I think what we were hearing in these interviews with peer agencies is that, you know, maybe when they went out to bid and got the technology in place, the technology wasn't able to do certain things, but now it is. So this marketplace is rapidly evolving, and we really want to know what's happening right now today and what technology tools are available right now. So we've drafted an RFI. The complete RFI is available in the board packet tonight. It's the full last like 60 pages of the packet because there are a lot of appendices. The RFI itself, don't worry, is pretty short because we don't want to overburden the vendors. But the structure of the RFI focuses on both our goals and trying to get feedback from vendors on, you know, are these goals achievable? What technologies and solutions do they have available that can help us achieve our goals? Will they be able to provide us data so that we can tell we're making progress towards meeting our goals? And then the other thing that the RFI focuses on, because we are a very big transit agency and we receive a significant amount of, we're not very big, I should correct, we're a moderate sized transit agency, but we get a fair amount of federal and state funding, and we don't want to jeopardize that and jeopardize our other federally funded services by doing anything that's going to run afoul of regulations. So this is kind of a new area, and I think vendors are learning how to comply with those regulations. So we just want to get a sense of their experience complying with federal regulations and whether they'd be able to do that and whether we'd be able to use federal funding for this software. So the next steps are to, if you approve the RFI tonight, we would release the RFI and collect responses. In the RFI, we talk about having follow-up one-on-one meetings with offerers who are responsive. And then after that, we would draft an RFP or an RFQ in consultation with you, the board, the CAC, the TAC, and the City of Woodland and other stakeholders. So that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Kristen. And I think as we get there, could you summarize your recommendation for us, and then we'll turn to questions.
Yes, let me try to bring up the board items so that I can tell you exactly what I'm recommending. So it is recommended that the YCTD Board of Directors approve a microtransit and mobility as a service request for information for planning purposes.
Okay, excellent. Questions, colleagues? Mr. Stallard has a hand up. Tom, this is your city that we're talking about mostly on this one, so look forward to hearing your questions.
Thanks, Don.
Then we'll go to public comment and further discussion.
I just want to mention that I'm taking a very close personal interest in this. I want to thank staff for briefing me, and Don, thank you for sitting in as well. And I've had a subsequent meeting with my own staff and another one coming up. We appreciate the courtesy of having reviewed the draft of this RFI, and it reflects a few refinements we offered, nothing major. And we just appreciate the staff's flexibility in working with us. And we realized while it's, we have a primary interest in it, this could be a template that goes countywide and basically creates a model for all of us at some future point. Maybe, not necessarily, but maybe. So that's why I certainly think we all have a strong interest in getting this right. Thank you.
Very good. Chris has got a question, comment, and then others I'll look forward to. Chris.
Yeah, just to comment and echo Mr. Stollard's comments on this as well. I mean, it's getting to this point where we're actually, I want to applaud staff for working with Woodland and working to get this initiated. I think this kind of conversation, at least challenging ourselves and looking at other sources of service and technology is really a good step for the district to see what can and can't be done, what might fit us, or what other work we may need to do to accommodate sort of the mobility as a service. And I think that will help us, I think about kind of our strategic planning and priorities for the staff about what things we want to get in place to help support this type of service going forward. So again, it's a North Star to be this kind of having this kind of ask and bringing in outside vendors. Kristen, right? You're kind of depending on what kind of service you get depends on who you talk to and what you're working with. We're very aware of that. We love our VIA system, but we also know it could go away tomorrow because it's a newer technology company and it's working today doesn't mean it will be around in 2 years or in a month. So kind of this could be something that we share out with everybody about what we learned and just a really good exercise. I want to applaud staff for taking the leap.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Jesse, Lauren, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me, Chair. Just have a brief comment. First, I'd like to also thank staff. I think this is a pretty amazing request for information. As a small city, we're not quite big enough, along with Knights Landing, to have this much activity and research going into modernizing the Your Ride service. But because Woodland, is taking the flag on this one, it will improve service and outcomes and experience for our city also. So I am very enthusiastic about this process and how we're moving forward together in Yolo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. Lucas Frerick, do you have a question or comment?
And just a couple of quick comments, and thanks so much for the work on this at the staff perspective level. I really appreciate it. I think that these are the types of items we've been talking about in terms of working on a sort of being more creative in how we approach and being more flexible in how we approach service delivery of transit options. And I think one of the things we've been talking about for a number of months now certainly is this issue of other types of not just sort of fixed route bus service, but other types of opportunities as well. And this gets, obviously we have the SACOG grant helps to get Your Ride established. But I think that I'm really proud to see us sort of continuing to move the ball forward in this way. I also would just say, I think, we do have a pretty, each of our communities is unique and has different needs. And I think that, we had, West Sacramento does have the bike share back again along with Sacramento, but West Sacramento and Davis and Sacramento had the bike share for a bit of time. And there were other cities in the region that wanted to also experience bike share, and we didn't quite get there in the SACOG process, but there's definitely a bunch of transit mobility options that are needed. And so I'm very excited about the sort of us sort of searching for some putting this proposal out to and see what's out there for the different types of options for transit and in sort of to help meet the needs that exist in all of our respective communities. Thanks. Appreciate your time, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Lucas. I don't see other hands from the panelists. Do we have any public comment before we take our action? I don't see any hands raised in public. Do we have any written comments? Jose, did you have something?
We do have a raised hand from Mr. Alan Hirsch.
Oh, I see. He's raised it now. Okay, and then we'll hear from Alan, and then we'll move to written comment. And Alan, do you have 2 minutes for us?
Thank you very much. Just two things. Software, rollout of software is very fraught with danger. I think we should always bias on the side of not being the first on our block with something new in the software, because it's always complexities. Second is one of the metrics we should measure success by is greenhouse gas per trip and for travel miles, because that has to underlie just about everything we do now. So, but thank you. This is a wonderful project, and I'm glad we're going forward on it.
Thank you, Alan. Are there other hands raised? I don't see any. Okay, any written comments? But we do have a hand raised now.
Yeah, apologies, Chair.
Ms. or Molly Cohen D'Agostino.
Hi, so can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Hi, so I'm the Woodland rep on the CAC, and I just want to say that I'm so thrilled to hear that this is happening and supportive of the microtransit project, and I'm glad you're taking the time to get more information, and I just think you're going about it the right way. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this folds out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Molly.
Ready for motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I think we are. I don't see any other public comment. Do we have any written comment?
It did come in. I have not received any new emails for public comment.
Very good. So Tom, are you ready to make a motion?
I'm happy to move the staff recommendation that we authorize this request for information to be distributed.
Very good. Is there a second?
Lauren would like to second this motion.
Excellent. So we have a motion by Staller and a second by Lauren. Please call the roll.
Davis,
Aye.
West Sacramento,
Aye.
Winters,
Aye.
Woodland,
Tom?
Woodland.
It looks like he froze and
Oh, looks like it. Yolo County.
I'm unfrozen,
okay.
but I'm having all kinds of internet trouble tonight, so I'm an aye, obviously. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. And YOLO is aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
All right, very good. Thank you. Look forward to the next step there. Now we're to item 8, update regarding YOLO bus staffing.
At this time.
Autumn?
I think Jose and I are going to tag team this one. This all is predicated on some news we got on technically my first day. So clearly Jose has got a lot more background on this issue than I do. But I just want to start by saying, this is not the conversation we were planning to have with you tonight. It's not the conversation we hope to have, but we are where we are. And I want to just commend Jose as well as our partners at Unitrans and also SAC-RT, who we've been talking with very closely over the last week and a half as we triage and troubleshoot this unexpected situation. And I just want to say it's been a real pleasure. They say that there's like no better way to get to know some people than to go through a little bit of a crisis with them. And I'd say that this is been a little bit of a trial by fire for my first week on the job, but I couldn't imagine in doing it with a better team, particularly working with Jose. And it's just been really appreciated all the hard work that a lot of people have been putting in to help us figure out this problem. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jose to kind of walk through where we are, how we got here, and then we're not going to be taking any action tonight because of this all came up after the we have another meeting scheduled for next Monday, which was publicly noticed last Friday, in order to take some of the actions that we may need to take in order to address the staffing shortage. So this is not an action item. This is an opportunity for discussion, answering questions, but any kind of action will be taken next week on the 20th. So I'll turn it over to Jose.
Thank you, Autumn, and I appreciate those words. It's very mutual. Trial by fire, and I think you came out pretty unscathed as far as I'm concerned, or unburned, I should say. So I appreciate the support you've given us, the support from our partners. And while we're in a challenging situation, it's never been my goal or intent to simply present problems to the board and ask for guidance. It's to come to you with the issues, our challenges, and then recommendations and strategies to move forward and to adapt. So that being said, as Autumn did indicate, we are not asking for specific action at this time. We will be providing additional information and a more solid recommended path to mitigate during the special meeting on September 20th. So in brief, where we are at is a significant shortage on resources, primarily staffing. I should say it's focused right now on staffing to provide operators, to provide the planned expansion of the Route 42, which is a key component of that first phase of the Yologo implementation plan. The staffing and recruitment efforts had been ongoing since the Yologo study was adopted back in April of this year. We meet regularly, weekly, with Transdev, who is our contracted operator of all Yolobus services at this time, and received updates on a myriad of different areas, including operations, planning, administration, but more specifically, staffing levels, recruitment efforts, maintenance efforts, and making sure that all of our plans are in place and on track to meet what were then our planned expansions for the Route 42. And as we were making those plans, and as we've discussed in prior months, also some expansion of Yolobus in local fixed route service in Davis. Both of those expansions would have required an increase in the number of available operators for Yolobus or for Transdev. And what happened, or what we've been informed of very recently, is that for a number of different reasons, some of them can be quantified, some of them we don't have additional information, but for various number of reasons, we are short operators. We need an additional, I believe it's Transdev has told us, an additional 6 to 7 operators to expand the Route 42 during the peak periods as we had originally planned. And then an additional 6 to 8 operators to expand in the, to provide the temporary Davis assistance that we had been expecting to operate on beginning September 22nd. What Transdev had informed us of, again, recently, is that there were a number of employees who left voluntarily, some who were required to leave through involuntary reasons, leaving us with insufficient operators to be able to provide the expanded Route 42 without taking some additional resource reallocation. And what I mean by that really is requesting or considering further reductions of some of the services, some of the fixed route services that Yolobus provides, and reprioritizing our available resources and coordinating them to focus on safety, reliability, and as much mobility as possible. So we are facing a significant shortage and challenge. It is a primary reason why we have elected or had to make the decision to postpone the expansion of the Route 42, which was previously planned for this past Sunday, the 12th. The decision was not made lightly. And I want to stress that we did investigate all potential options, all potential avenues with our existing known available operators and resources, but it was too unreliable. It was too shaky to put out there to the public. Staff felt that it was inappropriate to put out a level of service that relied on a number of what I feel would be kind of temporary measures. And by that, I mean offering additional overtime, utilizing other available staff to cover shifts, et cetera, mitigating factors that, while they may have worked for a few weeks, would not have been reasonable or feasible long-term solutions. And so we made the difficult decision to not expand as we had originally planned, so that we don't put that onus on the public and put out service that they are not going to be able to reliably use as part of their mobility. We also, as part of the expansion of the frequency of the Route 42, it was also going to be in line with some modifications to the route path to serve different corridors, to streamline the service, to help improve on-time performance, change the routing paths locally in Davis as well as in downtown Sacramento. Those modifications were also postponed along with the expansion of the frequency, so that existing customers who have their current patterns and commutes would be able to continue utilizing them during this time of postponement. I would like to indicate or stress that it is not staff's intent to cancel this expansion. This is a postponement, and while we do not have a hard date when we can aim to reinstitute the expansion at this time, we are working closely with Transdev and monitoring all of our available resources, their recruitment efforts, working with our partners, Unitran and Sacramento Regional Transit, to identify when we would be able to, again, reliably and safely plan for and select a date for the expansion of the Route 42, as it was one of the key recommendations from our multi-year Yologo study. I'd be happy to go into additional detail about efforts that Transdev took to try and avoid this situation. It is presented in the staff report, but as I mentioned at the beginning, I think it's more important to present to our board and to the public tonight our plans for moving forward and strategies to address the issues rather than dwelling on. Happy to answer questions on it, but rather than dwelling on the past and how the situation is we got here, we do have a plan to reallocate resources to increase recruitment and retention, and then to work with Transdev to pick a date where we can expand the 42 and make any other adjustments in our available services that are being provided to the public. As part of our responsibility in contract management, we have sent to Transdev a letter of deficiency due to the inability to provide the levels of service which had been planned. This letter has required a response from Transdev management by the end of this week. Again, as part of our responsibilities to this district, to our customers, and to Transdev as well, to making it clear where we feel those deficiencies are, how they came about, and basically stressing to work with us to make sure that we have a clear path and clear strategies to make sure that we can avoid similar situations in the future, but also mitigate these challenges, these staffing challenges, and bring our planned expansions back on track as quickly as reliably possible. So with that, I would answer any questions that the board may have to the best of my ability. Please note that I am taking this extremely seriously, fairly personally. I do apologize to the public and to the board for being in this position and not being able to be celebrating with us tonight, but we do plan to make the best service possible and to eventually be able to celebrate with our board and with the public the expansion of the 42 and other benefits that are going to come of implementation of our Yologo plan.
Thank you. Sorry, I was on mute for a second. So both Autumn and Jose, you mentioned a September 20th special board meeting, and I think that's we've checked calendars, but we'll need to post that so that the public sees that it's coming up. What's your sense of the most? You want to give a little bit more information about the plan for the service that you're going to be telling us about on the 20th? Or I know people have questions about, well, what are we going to do, and are we going to be able to honor the commitment to the riders of Unitrans? September 22nd, I think, is when that starts. So just a little bit of that, and what do you think that September 20th date will be devoted to?
Sure, I'll start, and Jose, feel free to fill in anything that I miss. So our staff's recommendation to the board, which will come before you, the packet will come out this week, and then we'll come to you on the 20th. And that meeting has been noticed. So that was the meeting was noticed in the Davis Enterprise last week, and it was also posted to our website and elsewhere. The recommendation is based on staff's sense of what the priorities are, and this really when we're facing a situation where we now know we simply can't do everything we promised to do, how do we decide what we are going to do? And so we've been doing this in internal conversations and in conversations with our partners. The priorities that we've identified are first and foremost to, as much as possible, meet our commitment to Unitrans because of that is a longstanding commitment we've made, and we know that the ridership on Unitrans routes is so high, and the university is returning to in-person learning on September 22nd. Without adequate transit service, we know that we're going to break transportation in Davis, and nobody wants that. There's, many people rely on the Unitrans service, and so our first priority is to make sure that we're able to meet a revised level of commitment. We had anticipated giving them 12 drivers. We're now going to be giving them 6, and we've worked with Unitrans on identifying the highest priority for those 6, and we're happy to go into detail on that. But that's part of what will be shared on the 20th, is exactly what service we'll be able to provide. And then Unitrans is going to change some things on their end to, as best as possible, spread the pain, I guess, if you will. Our second priority then is to maintain our existing service on those routes that serve the greatest number of riders. And so, of course, that's the Route 42, maintaining the existing service on the 42, that is our highest performing line. And then some of our other local serving routes, including the route to the Cache Creek Casino, and then some of the local routes in Woodland and West Sacramento. In order to meet the commitment to Unitrans, we are suggesting that we temporarily suspend the remaining commuter and express routes that we are continuing to operate, because those do see a very low level of ridership right now during the pandemic. Those services primarily serve commuters, people who work in downtown Sacramento. Those jobs, of course, many of those jobs continue to be remote at this time, and so ridership on those routes is quite low compared to our other routes. So the recommendation that you'll see reflects, again, our desire to do the least amount of harm to our current riders and to the Unitrans riders, because we have taken that on as a responsibility that we've already committed to. So that's what you'll see in the staff recommendation. We've also, as I mentioned, been communicating with SAC-RT about the possibility of having them take over a full operation of the Causeway Connection, which is a service that we jointly operate. We do half of the trips and they do half of the trips. And so we are in discussion with them about that. It doesn't look like it's going to work out to have that happen as quickly as the 22nd. But we are hoping that we can find a path forward on that, and we'll also share the details of where we are with that on the 20th.
Well, Autumn and Jose, I really appreciate I know the board's going to have questions and some comments, but I really appreciate the all hands on deck nimbleness that you've exhibited together, and the teamwork that your conversation here tonight and on the 20th display. And I think we do have it's kind of good that we've done the Yologo work, the comprehensive operational assessment work, the strategic vision work, so that you've got some touch points on how to proceed when you've got a surprise that happened in this way. And I'm glad that you've been able to put together the letter of deficiency that you've sent to TransDev, so that we can work with them to make sure that we address these issues. I appreciate RT's willingness to have this conversation, and the flexibility and understanding of Unitrans and the campus leaders to focus here. This is how we should be dealing with these problems as they emerge, and that's what when we talk about seamless mobility across the region, this is the kind of collaboration that we need to be demonstrating. And so I appreciate this, and I know that we've all got questions now, and we'll have look forward to the presentation and the problem solving that you continue to do this week when we get together next week. But colleagues, I have had a couple of opportunities to hear from Autumn and Jose during the course of this last 10 days or so, and I think you have a lot to be proud of with this team that's been working on this challenge. So I'll shut up now and turn to colleagues for questions and comments. This is for discussion tonight, not for action. So anybody have something you'd like to say, and we could hear public comment before that, or we could hear it after. Would anyone like to make a comment?
I'm happy to hear take public comment first if we want, and then come back to comments, or however you want to proceed.
Okay, why don't we hear any public comment here, or just briefly? Is there anybody who'd like to address us on this? Mr. Hirsch, I see your hand is up. So we'll go ahead and hear from you, and then we're going to hear from our colleagues. Here in a second.
How can we help in the activist community with the organization? Please reach out to us. If there's anything we can do to write letters to explain or help the agency, please use us.
Help us find some bus drivers.
All right, thank you, Alan. We appreciate that. Any other comments from public before we turn to board? Okay, I don't see any. So, Mr. Frericks, I think this affects all of us, but do you have any comments, given that you represent Davis here, and part of this affects your city?
Well, appreciate the update from staff. I mean, again, welcome to the organization, Autumn. I think that obviously not what we've been wanting to, or probably would want to dealing with in your first week. But this transit continues to be dealt major blows in a lot of ways throughout the pandemic. I would just say a couple quick comments. One, we haven't utilized the National Guard yet to fill these roles. And I'm not even kidding when I say that. Massachusetts is doing that. They've actually called up the National Guard to help with their shortage of bus drivers, school bus drivers particularly. There's a national shortage there, but in school bus drivers, but also in transit agency drivers. The point, though, all kidding aside, is we're not alone. This is an issue affecting many transit agencies around the country, not just ours. So appreciate all the steps that you've reasonably outlined already, including working with RT and having them sort of do some taking over of some of the Causeway connection. I think that's really important. But I do think it's pretty important for us to, if possible, maintain the MOU that was signed with Unitrans. As you know, I can tell you what buses are going to be full and whether they, especially if there are drivers for them. And so I think that would be really most appreciated if there's an ability for us to maintain our end of the agreement with UC Davis as things come back to session. And I recognize this is just we hope it's a sort of stopgap measure, or in the process of getting new drivers vis-a-vis TransDev. But I do think that, again, just raising that issue of we're not alone in this sort of kind of sticky situation right now. This is facing other transit agencies across the country. And I'm not sure that they are, what they're doing yet in terms of fixing the problem. But just to know that we're seeing this across many agencies in California and across the country. Thanks. Appreciate some opportunity to provide a few comments.
Very good. Thank you, Lucas. Any other comments? Okay, I'm not. Jesse?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm very deeply appreciative of the work that staff is doing on this, and having the kind of very empathetic, caring structure of reducing harm and then finding solutions. I think that is the path forward. I'm sure that you've had many conversations, you, Jose, and Don, or Autumn, Jose, and Don on this, but I'm curious if there's a robust exit interview process for the drivers that have left. And I'm very interested in kind of a dynamic recovery plan and maybe a timeline if that's possible. And I look forward to the conversations on the subject on the 20th. Thank you.
Jesse, thanks. Very good comments.
If I could just chime in with regard to the kind of the exit interview question, I think I have a lot more learning to do about, some of that. What I've been told anecdotally from Jose and others is that, wages are going up across the industry, and Transdev has recently increased some of its hiring bonuses and salaries for both new and experienced drivers. It remains to be seen. Those took effect September 1st. It remains to be seen whether or not that's going to be sufficient to recruit the number and retain the number of drivers that we need to climb out of this hole. I think I can imagine that we may need to have additional conversations about, what it may take, including potentially having to revisit some of the contract provisions to make sure that we're able to, to pay the workforce what we need to pay them in order to make sure we have a stable workforce to run the bus.
Thank you, Adam.
Mabel, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation at this point?
I would just like to thank the staff and the team for your willingness to meet the commitment that you've made to Unitrans in some modified form, of course. I understand that Jeff Flynn, our general manager of Unitrans, and Matt will both participate in the meeting next week. So thank you for your efforts and welcome, Autumn.
I'm not seeing other hands, so I think unless I hear from anybody in the next 10 seconds, we'll move on to the next item. 10, 9, 8. Okay. Thank you, everybody. We'll move on, and we'll be back on the 20th and hear the rest of it, and we'll move forward. And is Mr. Klein the Transdev representative?
No, Mr. Klein is our Transdev general manager.
So, Mr. Klein, thank you for being with us this evening. And we know that we're working together to solve this issue, and look forward to your involvement as we move forward. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon. Now we'll move on to item 9, the director's report.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. So we have we've touched on a lot of these issues already. So I do have a couple of small things, but I don't want to retread the same ground with you. The transition, as you can see, we are very much transitioning in real time, and I'd say we're working closely together. We're sort of taking the issues as they come at the moment, and we're looking forward to having an opportunity to step back and have a more deliberate and comprehensive discussion about how Jose and I wanted to kind of divvy up leadership and responsibility. But in the meantime, we're just kind of making it up as we go along right now. As far as the Unitrans assistance goes, we'll be talking in more detail about that. We'd originally planned to bring that item to you, of course, today with budget detail. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is just that because we are, reducing our commitment to Unitrans as far as what we're going to deliver, we do anticipate that Unitrans will be reducing the dollar amount of budget that they're allocating to us, and we're waiting to hear back from them specifically what they want to do there. So we hope to have that as part of our recommendation to you next week on the 20th. Essentially a detailed budget and more details on our service plan with them. On the Causeway Connection, we mentioned, that we talked about that already. There, some of the kind of complicating factors I would say are with regard to the buses themselves, and making sure that we're able to kind of, there's a lot of, once you get into it, there's a lot of details around sharing buses. Because we use different fare payments, et cetera. And so I think those are some of the issues that we'll have to sort of work through. I think the other challenge is just kind of figuring out the right amount of time that we want to ask them to provide this service. I think there's a lot of work that would it take to actually have them take over our service. And so therefore, they don't want to do that, to just take over our service for 12 weeks. If they're going to make a commitment to do all the work of moving their schedules around and buses, et cetera, then they're looking for a kind of they want to know that it's going to be a kind of a longer term commitment on our part. And I think those are some of the questions that we need to work through to make sure that it's something we're all comfortable with. I did want to mention one other thing, which is that we've been asked by SAC-RT to participate in a regional free fare day. It kind of as we're entering the official wildfire smoke season. There's some of the regional agencies led by SAC-RT are working together to provide a free fare day that corresponds with a Spare the Air. So they have asked that we consider participating in that. We think it sounds like a great idea, but wanted to just flag that for the board if that's something the board would want to have input on, because it is an issue that would impact our collection of fares and our fare revenue. So I wanted to flag that and see if there's any questions about that before we go ahead. And so I'll just note that. And then the as far as the attachments that are in the packet, we have the ridership reports. We have the long-range board meeting calendar, which we did a little bit of updating, but this is a place where I would appreciate your input and feedback, because this is, as I understand it, very much a board-driven calendar. We did hear a comment at the beginning about that the I-80 Managed Lanes project potentially should be included in the calendar going forward. So happy to hear any direction or or thoughts from the board on that. And then lastly, the fourth quarter financial statements are included as well. And we're happy to answer questions on those.
Okay. Thank you, Autumn. Any questions or comments on the director's report? No. I think.
Apologies, Chair Saylor. We do have one request from Alan Hirsch to comment, but I don't know if you wanted to hear those comments first or have our board discuss first.
Well, I think we'll have board discussion. I think Mr. Frericks, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question. I mean, I do think would be curious about I recognize there are a variety of things that the staff is working on right now that are sort of very, I would say, immediate and need attention, but when appropriate, sometime in the next couple of months, I think an update on the I-80 project would be really, more thorough update would be really helpful, I think, as a board agenda item.
Okay, thank you. Anything further from other members of the board? Mr. Stallard, is that your hand, or is that just, are you scratching the computer, or what's going on there?
I am scratching my computer. I think it would be really nice if we had somebody from Caltrans present on I-80, so and answer questions. So when we get to it, but I don't know that it needs to be on every month, but I think it's something that needs to be visited with some regularity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Padilla, do you have your comment? Want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Yeah, we can definitely have someone from District 3, one of the project managers for I-80 present, if the board is interested. So
very good.
Just let me know and we can try and schedule it.
Lucas, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just a quick clarification. I'm not sure it's always as much about them presenting the project as about just providing regular updates and just, being able to answer sort of questions as the process goes along. I mean, there may be a need for another public presentation on what the project is, but I think it's really about, I think there continues to be some questions and just sort of progress updates and things like that are really what people are interested in, but either might work or both might work.
And I think it's probably when there's a milestone or some activity that needs to get updated, or some funding request, or something that comes up. And of course, we do have, as an agency, a role in this project. We are the applicant for some of the funding, so we have a reason to have an ongoing interest, as well as the mobility of the region. It's also relevant to us, and so I trust that Autumn can work with Mr. Padilla and others at the Caltrans district office, figure out the best way to strategize how to bring it forward. It doesn't have to be at the next meeting, but just keep us in the loop. Alex, your hand is still up. I think that's just an accident. Are there any other board members' comments? Okay, we have Mr. Hirsch would like to make a comment on matters presented in the director's report. Alan, go ahead.
Yes, 2 items for your future calendar. The DISC project, again, is very important. It's a larger project on the edge of Davis, which would be a logical place to have instead of having the bus stopping in the 42 bus stop in West Sacramento, which breaks the connection between Davis and Sacramento for commuters, a stop at with the transfer where the circle is broken, and DISC would be logical. There's also, they'll allow us a bus lane there. They also can put a bus layover place where there's interconnection between Unitrans. It's a really important strategic project. You should be apprised of that, and your staff should be involved with that. The second is to reconceptualize what these managed lanes are about. We're talking about bus rapid transit, fast routes, not local routes, but fast regional routes. And that's bus rapid transit. And Jeff Flynn at Unitrans made an amazing presentation to the Unitrans board. and I would advisory board, I suggest you might invite him to make a presentation to your board, because those are the sorts of big picture concepts that we should be thinking about for the I-80 project. So I suggest those two items: the DIS project and the bus rapid transit educational presentation for the board by Jeff Flynn at Unitrans.
Okay, thanks, Alan. We'll consider that. Let's see, anything further from any public comment beyond that? I don't see anyone. I think that brings us to the conclusion of the director's report. And we're going to recess to closed session, I believe. Hope, do you anticipate that we'll have anything to report out of closed session?
No, Chair Saylor, I do not.
So you no need for anyone to continue to be on hold for us to come back. And are we? This item is for a bargaining unit for unrepresented employees. So Hope, do we stay on this call, or do we stop and we come back in another call?
Chair Saylor, I did send a link earlier today. If I need to resend it, if the directors would just let me know. Otherwise, we will proceed to having the closed session under that Zoom link.
I think you should resend it, and we'll adjourn this meeting until September 20th for a special meeting. We're going to go into closed session, but we'll adjourn directly from that. And then we have our October 11th meeting. Thanks, everyone. See you on the other side.
Thank you. I'll be ending the meeting.
Okay, bye-bye.